The shattered pieces of Sophia Morgan's heart seemed to crumble further with each passing day in the mausoleum that was once her home, a pristine monument to the life she destroyed with her own selfish hands. 6 months had crawled by since Ethan disappeared without a warning, without a note, without the courtesy of a final confrontation. Vanished from her life with the same quiet determination that had characterized their 4-year marriage. The luxurious 3-bedroom apartment that had once vibrated with their shared laughter now echoed with accusatory silence, each corner harboring memories that attacked her without mercy when she least expected them. Sophia dragged her fingertips across the polished mahogany of his desk where a thin layer of dust had settled, the only thing he had allowed to remain behind. She remembered that Tuesday evening with excruciating clarity. The memory burned into her consciousness like a brand. She had returned home from her executive position at Westwood Enterprises, her mind already formulating excuses for coming home late again after another working dinner with Kyle. She had expected to find Ethan in the kitchen preparing his signature pasta primavera, the meal he faithfully made every Tuesday despite her frequent absences. Instead, she discovered a home surgically emptied of his presence, his closet methodically half vacant, his passport missing from their shared safe, his dresser drawers organized with military precision, but conspicuously lacking his favorite clothes. Even his coffee mug, the chipped blue ceramic one he refused to replace despite her countless complaints about its appearance, had been washed, dried, and placed with deliberate care back in the cabinet, as if to emphasize that he had left nothing for her to clean up, not even his dirty dishes. The first 48 hours were a tornado of denial and frantic activity. Sophia called his phone repeatedly until the automated voice informed her the number was no longer in service. She bombarded his email with increasingly desperate messages that bounced back undelivered. She called his office with trembling hands only to be told by his assistant, Meredith, Mr. Morgan has tendered his resignation and taken an indefinite leave of absence. The words delivered with a glacial professionalism that suggested Sophia was now categorized as an unwelcome outsider rather than the wife of her beloved boss. For days, Sophia existed in a state of suspended disbelief. He would walk through the door at any moment with a rational explanation that would dissolve this nightmare. A family emergency he hadn't had time to communicate, a work crisis that demanded immediate attention, a spiritual retreat where phones were forbidden. Anything that would explain how the man she married, reliable, communicative, thoughtful Ethan, could have evaporated from her life without a single word of farewell. But as days crystallized into weeks, and weeks calcified into months, the truth she had desperately attempted to bury began to suffocate her with increasing ferocity. He knew everything, she whispered to the empty apartment, her voice fractured by the weight of her transgressions. He saw it all. The memory stalked her dreams and ambushed her waking moments. Ethan standing motionless by her open laptop, his face a carefully constructed mask of composure that terrified her far more than any explosive rage could have. On the screen, message after incriminating message between her and Kyle Thomas, her colleague from the marketing department. Flirtatious exchanges that had crossed professional boundaries months ago, arrangements for clandestine meetings disguised as work commitments, intimate photographs exchanged during moments stolen from their respective spouses. A digital record of betrayal so comprehensive it left no room for denial. I saw everything, Ethan had said, his voice devoid of the warmth that had once made her feel like the center of his universe, not raising his voice to convey his pain, not smashing objects to externalize his rage. Just 3 devastating words that demolished their marriage more effectively than any screaming match could have. He didn't demand explanations or interrogate her for sordid details. He simply packed a suitcase with mechanical efficiency while she cycled through hysterical pleading, dramatic sobbing, and desperate attempts to touch him, only to have him step away each time, as if her fingers carried a contagion he could not afford to contract. Please, Ethan, it meant absolutely nothing. It was a terrible mistake. We can work through this together. People overcome affairs all the time, she had begged, clinging to relationship platitudes that sounded hollow even to her own ears. His response sliced through her with surgical precision. Some broken things aren't worth the effort of reconstruction, Sophia. Sometimes the damage reveals the true nature of what we thought we had. Then he walked out with the same quiet dignity he had displayed throughout their marriage, leaving behind his wedding ring placed deliberately on the granite countertop next to her car keys. A symbolic exchange, his commitment for her faithlessness. The revelation of her infidelity cascaded through their social circle with devastating efficiency, each disclosure spawning new waves of judgment and condemnation. The worst aspect wasn't Ethan's departure. It was enduring the continued presence of everyone who chose to remain in her disintegrating world. You didn't just have a momentary lapse of judgment and cheat on Ethan, her former friend Rachel Donovan articulated with precise cruelty over coffee at their usual spot 1 week after his disappearance. You systematically betrayed him with Kyle, Amber's husband, your husband's brother-in-law, during their anniversary celebration, in their guest bathroom while everyone searched for you to make the congratulatory toast Ethan had asked you to prepare. Each detail was a separate conviction, delivered with escalating revulsion that transformed Rachel's previously friendly face into a mask of contempt. What category of person consciously makes those choices, Sophia? What were you possibly thinking? Sophia had no adequate response prepared. The affair with Kyle had been intoxicating primarily because of its forbidden dimensions. He was charismatic, unpredictable, attentive in precisely the ways Ethan, dependable, hardworking, considerate Ethan, occasionally wasn't during periods of professional stress, but she had never intended for their relationship to evolve beyond a collection of exhilarating moments stolen from their everyday responsibilities, a temporary escape from the predictable patterns of married life. She certainly never anticipated that Ethan would discover her password-protected messages. Never calculated that the night before his discovery, Kyle had carelessly used her laptop to check his email while she showered, forgetting to log out of the messaging application they utilized for their clandestine communications. The consequences detonated across their interconnected lives with nuclear force. Amber, Ethan's younger sister and the backbone of their extended family, filed for divorce from Kyle within 48 hours of learning about the affair. Their parents, who had embraced Sophia as the daughter they never had, now responded to her increasingly desperate calls with automated voicemail messages. Her own mother, upon absorbing the comprehensive details of her daughter's behavior, stated with uncharacteristic coldness that she required significant time to process how the daughter she raised could deliberately inflict such calculated pain on someone who loved her unconditionally. The professional fallout was equally devastating. Whispers and abruptly terminated conversations followed her through the corridors of Westwood Enterprises. Kyle received a lateral transfer to another department after Human Resources processed multiple complaints about their inappropriate workplace relationship. He subsequently blamed Sophia for inadequate discretion and ceased responding to her messages altogether, his self-preservation instincts apparently stronger than any attachment they had formed. One by one, friends evaluated the situation and selected sides. Predictably, no one aligned themselves with her position. I acknowledge that I made a serious mistake, she attempted to explain to anyone still willing to listen to her perspective. People have extramarital affairs constantly throughout society. Marriages frequently survive such challenges. Why is everyone behaving as if I committed some unpardonable transgression against humanity? The answer arrived unexpectedly when Amber appeared at her doorstep, unannounced 3 weeks after the implosion of both their marriages. Her normally immaculate appearance showing signs of the emotional tornado she had weathered. Because your actions transcended simple infidelity, Amber stated, her eyes reddened, but her voice remarkably controlled. It wasn't exclusively about the physical betrayal. It was your deliberate selection of partners. It was the location you chose for your rendezvous. It was the fact that you maintain eye contact with me every single day afterward without a flicker of remorse. It was your comprehensive disregard for anyone in your orbit beyond yourself. I never deliberately intended to cause such widespread... Amber interrupted her with a sharp gesture. Stop immediately. You don't get the privilege of reconstructing this narrative. You understood exactly what destructive choices you were making with each step. Both of you did. She paused, visibly gathering her emotional resources. Were you aware that Ethan had been planning an elaborate surprise second honeymoon for your upcoming anniversary? He had been working additional hours for nearly 7 months to finance it without touching your joint savings. That explains his occasional, emotional unavailability that you complained about to anyone who would tolerate your self-centered perspective. Sophia felt reality tilt precariously beneath her feet. I had absolutely no knowledge of those plans. Naturally, you didn't. You were excessively preoccupied playing the misunderstood victim in your otherwise solid marriage. To notice he was systematically sacrificing his limited free time to create something special for your happiness. Amber extracted an envelope from her designer handbag and placed it on the coffee table between them. He specifically requested I deliver this document to you personally. Legal papers outlining the dissolution of your marriage. Everything divided with mathematical precision, exactly consistent with his character. Fundamentally fair until the bitter conclusion of your relationship. As Amber prepared to depart, she delivered her parting assessment with devastating accuracy. You know what genuinely fractures my heart beyond repair? Despite everything you put him through, he still ensured you would be financially secure. After your complete betrayal of his trust, he made absolutely certain you wouldn't suffer practical consequences alongside the emotional ones. That's the caliber of man you discarded for momentary excitement. The isolation of social ostracism was eventually manageable. The persistent absence of Ethan was not. Every aspect of his disappearance demonstrated methodical planning and execution. His personal mobile phone disconnected permanently. His professional contacts uniformly refused communication with her. All social media accounts systematically deactivated without announcement. Their joint financial accounts divided to the exact penny. His portion withdrawn without explanation. Credit cards canceled without warning. Email addresses abandoned without forwarding information. It appeared as though Ethan Morgan had strategically removed himself from existence, in any context that included her presence. 3 months after his calculated departure, Sophia engaged the professional services of James Reeves, a private investigator with an established reputation for locating individuals who specifically did not wish to be found. I believe complete honesty serves both our interests, Mrs. Morgan, Reeves stated after their comprehensive initial consultation in his downtown office. I've practiced this profession for over 2 decades. When someone disappears with this level of thoroughness and precision, it demonstrates meticulous advanced planning. Your husband didn't impulsively abandon your marriage. He engineered a sophisticated escape strategy. I desperately need to communicate with him, Sophia insisted, leaning forward in her chair. I require emotional closure. I need the opportunity to properly explain my perspective. Reeves examined her with the detached professional curiosity of someone observing an unfamiliar behavioral specimen. Based on the detailed information you provided, I believe he communicated his position regarding closure with remarkable clarity. Nevertheless, I will perform my professional responsibilities if you are prepared to compensate me at my standard rate. 2 exhausting weeks and $5,000 non-refundable dollars later, Reeves returned with disappointingly minimal progress to report. He submitted his formal resignation from his executive position with comprehensive transition documentation for his replacement, liquidated his retirement accounts, paid the associated early withdrawal penalties without complaint. His final credit card transaction was a one-way airline ticket to Chicago, but I've definitively confirmed he never actually boarded that particular flight. Classic misdirection technique. Reeves consulted his comprehensive notes with professional detachment. His personal and financial correspondence is being processed through a sophisticated forwarding service that employs multiple redirections across jurisdictional boundaries. Extremely professionally executed, he's clearly consulted specialists regarding effective techniques for maintaining privacy in the digital age. You're suggesting you cannot successfully locate him? Sophia questioned, unable to disguise the desperate edge creeping into her voice. I didn't communicate that conclusion. I stated he has implemented professional measures to avoid detection. There's a significant distinction. Reeves closed his leather-bound notebook with deliberate care. I can certainly continue my investigation, but I encourage you to honestly examine your underlying motivations. If I eventually succeed in locating him, what realistic outcome do you anticipate? He has demonstrated unambiguously that he desires no further connection with you. What reasonable evidence suggests he would suddenly become receptive to hearing your perspective on the situation you created? Sophia discovered she had no convincing response. Nevertheless, she authorized Reeves to continue his investigation indefinitely. On a particularly bleak Tuesday evening, Sophia encountered Kyle unexpectedly at an upscale grocery store downtown. She had been avoiding their former mutual locations, but had forgotten this particular establishment was near his new apartment. Their shopping carts collided around a corner display of imported wines, the same brand they had shared during their first clandestine meeting after hours at the office. Kyle looked substantially different, thinner, with dark circles shadowing his previously vibrant eyes. Designer clothes replaced with unremarkable casual wear. Recognition flashed across his face, immediately followed by something resembling panic. "Sophia," he acknowledged tersely, immediately maneuvering his cart to create distance between them. "Kyle, please," she responded, an unexpected surge of anger rising through her chest. "After everything, you can't even properly look at me now?" His expression hardened. "What exactly do you expect from me? Warmth? Compassion? After you publicly imploded both our lives with that misguided social media confessional?" "I never mentioned your name specifically." His derisive laughter attracted attention from nearby shoppers. "Right, because the video compilation that followed, with timestamps showing exactly where and when we disappeared together at my anniversary party, left so much room for interpretation." He lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. "Do you have any comprehension what my life has become? Amber refused any settlement negotiations. Her family's lawyers eviscerated me. I lost my partnership track. My parents barely acknowledge my existence. And you have the audacity to act wounded when I attempt to avoid extending this conversation?" "We made those choices together," Sophia countered, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. "But you abandoned me immediately when consequences arrived." Kyle stared at her with unconcealed incredulity. "Abandoned you? What delusional narrative have you constructed? You betrayed your husband with me. I betrayed my wife with you. We both behaved despicably. The appropriate response isn't continuing to support each other through the aftermath. It's recognizing the catastrophic error in judgment and taking responsibility separately." "Ethan completely disappeared," she responded, tears threatening. "At least Amber confronted you directly. He just evaporated." Something resembling genuine pity flashed across Kyle's features. "Did you expect him to stay and play the devastated husband role while you worked through your guilt? Ethan's always been 10 times the man I am, and you know what separates us most significantly? Self-respect. He recognized when something was irreparably damaged and made the clean break necessary for his survival. Meanwhile, I lingered in a mortally wounded marriage for weeks, pathetically attempting to salvage something unsalvageable." He shook his head with evident self-disgust. "That's the difference between us. He was strong enough to walk away immediately. I wasn't." Kyle abandoned his half-filled shopping cart where it stood, walking directly toward the exit without looking back. Sophia remained frozen between colorful displays of overpriced imported goods, acutely aware of curious glances from other shoppers who had witnessed their charge exchange. During periods of emotional vulnerability, which occurred with increasing frequency, Sophia sought validation through social media platforms. Perhaps it was her growing isolation, perhaps her desperate need for external validation, or perhaps simply the fundamental human requirement to feel heard. But 6 months after Ethan's calculated departure, she committed a catastrophic error in judgment. She published what she believed was a profound introspective essay about love, personal growth through loss, and the journey toward authentic self-discovery across her various social media accounts. Without explicitly naming individuals, she portrayed herself as someone who had made regrettable mistakes, but was courageously navigating a transformative personal journey. She composed flowery paragraphs about abandonment's emotional devastation, the challenging process of confronting personal shortcomings, and the tremendous courage required to rebuild after profound loss. The subsequent backlash manifested with unprecedented speed and devastating thoroughness. Someone, she strongly suspected one of Amber's loyal confidants, commented with damning screenshot evidence of text message exchanges between Sophia and multiple mutual acquaintances where she had characterized Ethan as emotionally unavailable, pathologically predictable, and insufficient for her intellectual and physical needs. Another anonymous account posted security camera footage captured in her office building's elevator, showing her and Kyle engaged in an unmistakably intimate embrace. The digital timestamp clearly established this occurring merely 72 hours before Ethan's discovery of their ongoing affair. Her attempted self-rehabilitation narrative backfired catastrophically, spreading virally throughout her social and professional networks before reaching even broader audiences. An anonymous content creator produced a devastating video compilation titled The Authentic Sophia Morgan, Comprehensive Documentation of Infidelity, incorporating photographs from Amber and Kyle's anniversary celebration, strategically time-stamped to highlight Sophia and Kyle's suspicious 20-minute simultaneous absence. The compilation included recorded statements from former friends describing her persistent complaints about Ethan, while deliberately omitting any mention of his exhausting work schedule dedicated to financing her surprise anniversary experience. Her misguided attempt to craft a sympathetic personal narrative transformed into a public referendum where anyone who had ever known her apparently felt entitled to contribute their assessment, perpetually casting yourself as the victimized party while destroying lives around you. Ethan demonstrates remarkable judgment in permanently removing himself from your toxic influence. How do you manage to sleep peacefully considering your deliberate destruction of a good man's trust? The professional fallout reached unprecedented heights when Westwood's chief operations officer, not merely her direct supervisor, summoned her to an emergency meeting in the executive conference room. Sophia arrived to discover not only her department head, but also two members of the legal department and the director of human resources, waiting with expressions suggesting a medical terminal diagnosis discussion. Ms. Morgan, the COO began without customary pleasantries, I appreciate your prompt arrival. Unfortunately, circumstances necessitate immediate termination of your employment relationship with Westwood Enterprises. Sophia felt her stomach plummet. On what specific grounds? My performance metrics have consistently exceeded departmental requirements, despite personal difficulties. The Human Resources Director consulted documentation before responding. The termination classification is technically irreconcilable conflict with corporate representation standards. More directly, your viral notoriety has triggered communication from 7 significant clients expressing concern regarding their brand's association with our marketing department under your leadership. The severance package significantly exceeds contractual requirements, where the legal representative added, sliding a document folder across the polished conference table. We strongly advise against contesting these terms. A protracted legal dispute would benefit neither party's interests. The department head, previously Sophia's strongest internal advocate, finally made reluctant eye contact. If professional references become necessary for future employment opportunities, please direct inquiries specifically to the Human Resources Department. Standard policy prohibits direct communications between former management and prospective employers. The meeting concluded in under 12 minutes. Security personnel waited discreetly by her office to supervise the collection of personal belongings. Her corporate access credentials deactivated while she removed family photographs from her desk. Her parking access card disabled before she reached the executive garage level. Sophia sat in her luxury vehicle, unable to process the breathtaking efficiency with which her professional identity had been surgically removed alongside her personal relationships. The comprehensive destruction of her carefully constructed life was now complete. 2 weeks later, Sophia was mindlessly scrolling real estate listings, debating whether to attempt restarting elsewhere, when her intercom buzzed unexpectedly. No friends visited anymore. Delivery services left packages in the lobby. Even maintenance requests were handled during her scheduled grocery shopping hours to minimize uncomfortable interactions. Yes, she responded cautiously. Delivery for Sophia Morgan, an unfamiliar male voice responded. Signature required. Upon opening her door, she discovered a courier holding a registered letter rather than the anticipated package. She signed electronically, retreating immediately into her apartment without customary pleasantries. The envelope bore no return address. Inside, she found a single-page document with Sentinel security letterhead, Ethan's new employer, containing an unexpected announcement. Sentinel Security Corporation announces appointment of Ethan Morgan as Managing Director, Executive Protection Division. Drawing on extensive experience in developing comprehensive security protocols for multinational corporations, Mr. Morgan will oversee expansion of personalized security services for corporate executives and high-net-worth individuals facing elevated threat profiles. Prior to joining Sentinel, Mr. Morgan established distinguished reputation as Security Operations Director at Blackwater International, where his innovative approach to corporate security integration garnered industry recognition. Attached was a glossy professional photo showing Ethan in executive business attire, expression conveying confident authority without arrogance. The transformation from the man she married was remarkable. Not merely physical changes, but the unmistakable presence he projected through even a static photograph. No accompanying note explained why someone had forwarded this announcement to her personal address. No contextual information suggested motivation beyond ensuring she witnessed Ethan's accelerating professional trajectory while her own career imploded spectacularly. Sophia traced her fingers across his photographed features, struggling to reconcile this commanding executive with the man who had patiently tolerated her frequent criticisms about his supposed lack of ambition. The revelation that he had deliberately restrained his professional aspirations to accommodate her demanding career while simultaneously working additional hours to finance their surprise anniversary journey represented yet another layer of betrayal. Only this time, she had betrayed him through profound misunderstanding of his character. She impulsively reached for her phone, scrolling through contact information before realizing the futility. Everyone connected to Ethan had systematically removed her from their communication channels. She had no remaining method for expressing her belated recognition of his sacrifices or acknowledging her catastrophic misjudgment of his potential. The corporate announcement joined her growing collection of Ethan-related documentation, legal separation papers, final divorce decree, property division agreements, physical evidence of connections permanently severed by her own actions. What specific message would you communicate to him if your investigator successfully locates him? Dr. Linda Bennett inquired during their 6th intensive therapy session. After enduring weeks of debilitating insomnia and increasingly frequent panic attacks, Sophia had reluctantly sought professional psychological intervention. I would express my profound remorse, acknowledge that my behavior was completely unforgivable, admit that I never truly deserved his extraordinary commitment, Sophia responded with practiced precision. Dr. Bennett maintained her characteristic professional neutrality. Those statements exclusively concern your emotional experience, Sophia, not his psychological reality. I don't understand your meaning. I'm suggesting that your persistent desire to locate Ethan, to explain yourself, to achieve some nebulous emotional closure, these objectives remain fundamentally centered around your needs, your emotional processing, your potential absolution. Have you genuinely considered that his deliberate disappearance represents his method of reclaiming the personal agency you systematically undermined through your betrayal of his fundamental trust? The therapist's assessment struck Sophia with the force of physical impact. I never conceptualized the situation from that perspective. Perhaps that specific cognitive blind spot represents a significant component of the underlying relationship dynamic. Throughout subsequent weeks of intensive therapy, Sophia began the excruciating process of authentic self-examination. Her infidelity hadn't manifested spontaneously in an otherwise healthy relationship. There were established behavioral patterns long predating her involvement with Kyle, a persistent tendency towards seeking external validation, habitually attributing her dissatisfactions to others' shortcomings, consistently taking for granted the emotional stability Ethan provided, while simultaneously resenting the professional demands that enabled him to provide their comfortable lifestyle. I believe I fundamentally failed to appreciate the relationship we had constructed together, Sophia acknowledged during a breakthrough therapeutic session. Ethan he constituted the foundational stability beneath my daily existence. So consistently reliable that I completely overlooked his presence until he permanently removed himself from my life. Dr. Bennett nodded with professional approval. That represents genuine psychological insight. The critical question becomes, how will you integrate this awareness into your forward progress? The answer crystallized for Sophia after another month of intensive therapeutic work and painful self-reflection. She contacted Reeves to reactivate his investigation. "I require you to locate Ethan," she stated unequivocally during their meeting in his downtown office. "However, my objective has fundamentally changed. I'm not seeking closure or reconciliation. I need to make appropriate amends according to his requirements, not my preconceived agenda. If he refuses direct communication, I will respect that boundary completely. I simply need one final opportunity to acknowledge my responsibility." Reeves studied her with professional assessment, perhaps detecting something substantively different from the desperate woman who had initially engaged his services. "I'll implement every professional resource available to me. However, I cannot provide guarantees regarding the outcome." 3 weeks later, contrary to reasonable expectations, Reeves contacted her with unexpected developments. "I've successfully located your husband, Portland, Oregon, currently employed with a security consulting organization called Sentinel Strategic Services, residing in a modest, single-family residence in the Southeast District." He hesitated noticeably. Records indicate approximately 4 months at his current location. Prior to Portland, he maintained temporary residence in Seattle. Sophia's cardiovascular rhythm accelerated dramatically. "Has your investigation determined his relationship status?" Reeves demonstrated professional reluctance. "That information exceeds the parameters of locating him, which constituted my contracted responsibility. Please, I need to prepare myself emotionally before attempting contact. Limited surveillance suggests regular social interaction with professional colleagues. That represents the extent of information I'm ethically comfortable disclosing." Sophia immediately reserved airline transportation to Portland, departing the following morning. The characteristic Pacific Northwest precipitation seemed atmospherically appropriate as Sophia positioned herself across the street from the impressive Sentinel Security corporate offices, sheltered beneath a recently purchased black umbrella. Her physical appearance had undergone significant transformation. Her previously shoulder-length blonde hair, now styled in a shorter, more natural brunette configuration. She had unintentionally lost significant weight during the most intensive periods of social isolation. She barely recognized her reflection most days. Would he even visually identify her after their prolonged separation? Employees began exiting the corporate headquarters as the traditional workday concluded at 4 p.m. Sophia scrutinized each individual, searching for the familiar physical silhouette of the man she had married. Then she identified him among the departing professionals. Ethan emerged from the building, engaged in animated conversation with a colleague, responding with genuine laughter to something they had communicated. He appeared fundamentally transformed. His previously short-cropped hair now demonstrated greater length, complemented by a neatly maintained beard she had never previously observed. He wore a professionally tailored leather jacket she didn't recognize from their shared wardrobe, and his physical posture demonstrated a greater confidence, shoulders positioned with relaxed authority rather than the tension she remembered. Most disconcertingly, he projected authentic happiness. Her lower extremities initiated movement before her cognitive processes could intervene. She crossed the rain-slick street, heart pounding chaotically, oral cavity experiencing sudden extreme dryness. "Ethan," she called, her voice nearly obliterated by the mechanical noise of a passing commercial vehicle. He evidently failed to detect her voice, continuing his trajectory toward the employee parking facility while maintaining conversation with his professional colleague. "Ethan," she projected with greater volume from decreased distance. This attempt successfully captured his attention, his muscular frame demonstrating momentary tensing before he deliberately turned to identify the source. When his visual focus located her position, there was no dramatic shock response, no exaggerated recognition scene from cinematic fiction. Only quiet acknowledgement, followed by something more concerning, a deliberate emotional withdrawal from his expression. Sophia, the name delivered as factual observation rather than personal greeting. His colleague, an attractive woman with distinctive auburn curls, visually assessed the situation, confusion evident in her expression. "I desperately need to communicate with you," Sophia stated, suddenly acutely conscious of her bedraggled appearance. Rain-soaked despite the umbrella's protection, physically exhausted from recent air travel and months of psychological distress. No productive topics remained for discussion between us. Ethan's vocal patterns demonstrated noticeable evolution, more decisive, less concerned with minimizing emotional discomfort in others. Please grant me 5 minutes of your attention. I've traveled considerable distance. I never requested your presence. The auburn-haired woman briefly contacted Ethan's arm with gentle familiarity. Should I temporarily provide privacy for your conversation? Her voice demonstrated both compassionate warmth and professional confidence. Ethan negatively gestured. Completely unnecessary, Lila. Sophia was preparing to depart. He directly engaged his former wife's eyes with unflinching directness. Weren't you? I recognize my behavior was completely unforgivable, Sophia impulsively verbalized, abandoning her carefully prepared communication strategy. I understand irreparable damage cannot be undone. I'm not requesting reconciliation. I simply needed to ensure you understand that I now comprehend the magnitude of what I carelessly discarded. The extraordinary person I failed to properly value. Something momentarily flickered across Ethan's expression. Not emotional softening, precisely, but recognition of her statement. Is that communication intended to improve my emotional state? Knowing that you finally appreciate what you systematically destroyed only after completing its destruction? His words lacked deliberate cruelty, delivered instead with straightforward factuality. What specific outcome did you anticipate from this unexpected confrontation, Sophia? That I would emotionally disintegrate? That I would express continued anger? That we would experience some cinematic cathartic moment that would facilitate your psychological healing? I honestly don't know what I expected, she admitted with unprecedented candor. I simply needed visual confirmation of your continued existence, to communicate my genuine remorse for everything my selfishness destroyed. Ethan maintained prolonged silence. The precipitation intensified around their positions, impacting forcefully against Sophia's protective umbrella, saturating Ethan's outer garment. He demonstrated no awareness or concern regarding his increasing dampness. I acknowledge your apology, he finally responded, not because your behavior merits forgiveness, but because maintaining anger toward you represents wasted energy better directed toward the life I'm actively constructing. He briefly glanced toward Lila, something meaningful passing between them that Sophia couldn't interpret. I sincerely hope you eventually discover whatever you're searching for, Sophia, but you won't locate it here, not with me. Have you found happiness? Sophia questioned, immediately recognizing how pathetic the inquiry must sound. The corner of Ethan's mouth demonstrated slight elevation, not quite a complete smile, but approximating one. I've discovered something considerably more valuable than transient happiness. I've found genuine inner peace, which significantly outweighs emotional happiness. It demonstrates greater permanence. Lila consulted her timepiece. Ethan, we should proceed according to schedule. Dinner reservation awaits our arrival. He acknowledged with a slight nod. Take appropriate care of yourself, Sophia, he stated, his tone completely devoid of lingering resentment. Just the generic well-wishing one might extend toward a distant former acquaintance. Then he pivoted and departed with Lila, his hand naturally finding position against the small of her back, with comfortable intimacy. He never glanced backward. Sophia remained motionless in the increasing rainfall long after they disappeared from view, her umbrella dangling uselessly beside her. Something fundamental fractured within her psychological landscape, not with the violent agony characterizing their initial separation, but with the quiet finality of watching someone whose physical and emotional landscape you once knew intimately transform into a complete stranger before your direct observation. The hotel accommodation felt oppressively expansive that evening as Sophia perched on the edge of the mattress, staring vacantly into middle distance. She had mentally rehearsed this confrontation hundreds of times during sleepless nights. Ethan expressing continued anger, Ethan demonstrating emotional vulnerability, Ethan revealing lingering emotional wounds. She had prepared comprehensive responses for virtually every scenario except the one she actually encountered. Genuine indifference. No, that characterization wasn't precisely accurate. Not complete indifference. Release. Ethan had released her from his daily existence, from his cognitive processes, from occupying significant psychological space within his life. While she had spent countless months haunted by his deliberate absence, he had simply continued forward progression. Her mobile device indicated incoming electronic communication, a message from her legal representative. Final dissolution of marriage documentation arrived today, requiring your signature to complete legal proceedings. Ethan's proposed terms remain completely unchanged. Mathematically equal division of accumulated assets, no ongoing financial support in either direction. His legal counsel indicates these terms represent non-negotiable conditions. Attached for her review was a digitally scanned document bearing Ethan's signature already officially recorded. Neat, consistent, demonstrating no hesitation, precisely reflective of his fundamental character. Sophia had secretly maintained an irrational hope that direct visual contact might reawaken something within Ethan's emotional landscape. Not reconciliation, she maintained sufficient self-awareness to recognize that impossibility, but perhaps acknowledgement that their shared years together had represented something meaningful within his life experience. Instead, she received professional courtesy, basic civility, the kind specifically reserved for individuals who no longer possess the emotional power to cause personal injury. She signed the legal documents the following morning before her return flight, her hands demonstrating involuntary tremors, not from grief but from the crystallizing recognition that this truly represented the absolute conclusion. No additional fantasies of explanation or redemption. No further imagined scenarios where she might somehow compel his understanding. The situation had reached irrevocable conclusion. Sophia's return flight experienced mechanical difficulties, requiring an unscheduled stopover in Denver. Facing a 4-hour delay until maintenance completion, she reluctantly entered an airport lounge to avoid the crowded general terminal. The dimly lit establishment proved nearly empty during mid-afternoon hours. Just 2 businessmen engaged in hushed conversation at the bar, and a solitary woman reviewing documents at a corner table. Sophia selected a secluded booth, ordering excessive quantities of alcohol despite the early hour. Her 4th vodka tonic arrived simultaneously with the unexpected appearance of a smartly dressed corporate type sliding uninvited into the seat opposite hers. Drinking alone represents dangerous territory, the stranger observed with practiced charm. Professional disappointment or personal complication? Under normal circumstances, Sophia would have dismissed the unwelcome intrusion immediately. Today, the combination of emotional exhaustion, alcohol consumption, and desperate loneliness loosened her typical reservations. Witnessing your ex-husband's comprehensive happiness without your presence certainly qualifies as personal complication, she responded with uncharacteristic candor. The stranger, later introducing himself as Marcus, listened with apparent fascination as Sophia gradually revealed selective details of her imploded marriage. His sympathetic expressions encouraged further disclosure, eventually extending to her ill-considered affair with Kyle. Sounds like classic case of not recognizing what you possessed until permanent absence, Marcus observed, signaling for additional drinks. Happens constantly, hardly justifies complete social ostracism. His validation felt intoxicatingly refreshing after months of unrelenting condemnation. When he suggested continuing their conversation during the layover, Sophia abandoned her return flight entirely, extending her hotel reservation for additional days. The resulting 72-hour relationship progressed with alarming velocity, from airport lounge confidences to hotel room intimacies within hours. Marcus demonstrated everything Kyle had initially provided: attentive interest, validating her perspective without judgment, passionate physicality without emotional demands. On their 3rd evening together, Sophia returned from briefly leaving the room to discover Marcus examining the contents of her purse, her phone unlocked in his hand. "Seeking contact information?" she inquired lightly, attributing his behavior to eager interest rather than violation. His expression transformed immediately, charming smile replaced with calculating assessment. "Fascinating reading material," he commented, holding up her phone displaying Private Investigator Reeves's detailed reports, particularly the comprehensive financial documentation, specifically the settlement agreement showing your quite substantial divorce settlement. Her stomach contracted painfully. "You systematically targeted me." Targeted suggests excessive planning. "I recognized expensive clothing, desperate emotional state, wedding ring tan line, excessive drinking. Professional assessment suggested promising opportunity. He shrugged unapologetically. Layover relationships represent minimal investment for potentially significant return. Sometimes through direct financial access, sometimes through vulnerability to financial manipulation afterward. Sophia stared at the stranger occupying her hotel room, recognizing with sickening clarity how completely she had repeated her established pattern, seeking external validation regardless of source, ignoring warning indicators, compromising personal standards for temporary emotional comfort. "Leave immediately," she stated with unexpected steadiness. Marcus departed without argument, clearly recognizing the absence of exploitable opportunity. Sophia remained alone in the generic hotel room, confronting the devastating realization that her self-destructive patterns remained fundamentally unchanged despite months of supposed personal growth. 3 months following the Portland confrontation, Sophia received an unexpected text message from Rachel, one of the few former social connections who occasionally maintained minimal contact, perhaps from lingering social obligation rather than genuine concern. Believed you should receive this information from someone who still maintains minimal emotional investment in your well-being, however limited. Ethan and Lila formalized their relationship through marriage last weekend. Small, intimate ceremony conducted in Lila's hometown community. Her social media accounts contain photographic documentation. They project genuine happiness. Amber attended the celebration. Her emotional recovery continues positively. She's currently exploring a promising new relationship. Kyle apparently relocated to Arizona. Nobody mentions him within our social circle either. Included was a photographic image that Rachel presumably received through shared social connections. Ethan wearing a professionally tailored charcoal suit. Lila dressed in an elegantly simple white dress adorned with wildflowers arranged in her hair. They stood positioned beneath an ancient oak tree, foreheads gently touching, expressions demonstrating perfectly matched genuine happiness. The intimate authenticity captured within the image proved almost unbearably painful to observe. But what ultimately devastated Sophia wasn't their evident happiness. It was the undeniable evidence that life had continued progressive development, evolved positively, demonstrably improved for everyone except herself. She remained psychologically frozen within the moment of her betrayal, permanently defined by her worst decision, while others had discovered paths toward healing, reconstruction, and personal growth. 1 week later, curiosity overwhelming residual pride, she created a falsified social media account to access Lila's publicly available content. The platform's algorithmic system quickly suggested Ethan's profile as related content, apparently reactivated several months previously. His profile image depicted him at a mountain summit during sunrise. His biographical description stated simply, "Beginning again represents an ongoing action, not a singular event." Examining his limited public postings revealed glimpses into his reconstructed life, professional advancement within Sentinel Security, the launch of his independently developed security consulting division within the corporate structure, photographic documentation of extensive hiking expeditions with Lila, evening social gatherings with colleagues who contributed comments demonstrating inside jokes and authentic affection, and then the announcement that temporarily arrested her respiratory function. Lila and I are profoundly excited to announce that baby Morgan is expected to join our continuing adventure this October. Life consistently surprises us with its generous possibilities. The accompanying photograph displayed Lila's modestly visible pregnancy, Ethan's protective hand covering the small protrusion, their matched expressions demonstrating genuine wonder at their shared creation. Sophia closed the browser application and permanently deleted the falsified account. She sat motionless within her apartment, the same physical space she and Ethan had once shared, now extensively redecorated in a desperate attempt to exorcise his lingering presence, and confronted the painful truth of her situation. Ethan hadn't merely survived without her presence. He had demonstrably flourished. He had reconstructed his life not through destroying previous foundations, but by authentically progressing forward. No vengeful social media pronouncements, no deliberate attempts to further damage her reputation beyond the self-inflicted wounds she had created. No dramatic confrontations designed for emotional catharsis. He had simply chosen to live authentically well. And somehow that represented the most devastatingly effective response he could possibly have offered to her betrayal of his trust. Sophia examined her surroundings, the apartment with its forced decorative cheerfulness, its conspicuously empty photographic frames, its echoing solitude. For the first time, she permitted herself to perceive her reality with complete clarity. This wasn't a temporary holding pattern until her authentic life resumed normal operation. This represented her actual life now. One she had deliberately selected through each selfish decision, each moment prioritizing momentary desires above committed responsibilities. The private investigator she hired had successfully located Ethan, certainly. But what his investigation truly discovered was something considerably more painful than physical coordinates. The man she betrayed had successfully rebuilt, not because he lacked emotional depth, but because he possessed strength of character she had never fully appreciated until it was permanently directed away from her benefit. Ethan's final unspoken lesson wasn't about vengeance or retribution. It concerned authentic resilience, not the fragile variety that depends on others' suffering to feel personally powerful, but the genuine manifestation, the capacity to rediscover stable footing even when the foundation has been violently removed without warning. As Sophia finally began systematically organizing the remaining possessions Ethan had deliberately abandoned, she understood the fundamental truth that would necessarily shape whatever remained of her future existence. Some individuals reveal their true character through how completely they love you during good circumstances. Others, like Ethan, ultimately demonstrate it through how thoroughly they can remove you from their life when you prove unworthy of that remarkable capacity for love. If you like this story, please click the hype button. This video deserves to be popular. Have a nice rest.